All right, we're live. We want to get started right at 9 o'clock because the good Michael Trancio has to testify for us today. We'll just go around the room real quick, do some introductions, and then we'll get going. We're live, by the way. Go ahead, Marco.
Marco Monteblanco, President of the Washington State Fraternal Order of Police. Happy to be here this morning.
Chad, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Chad Petershik, State Chaplain.
Jeff, would you like to introduce yourself, sir? Okay. Jeff and Nye is on here, our state treasurer. We also have one of our labor attorneys. Jim, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, good morning. It's Jim David.
All right. And my name is James Shrimshire. I'm the legislative chair and the West Side vice president. With that, I will turn it over to the esteemed Michael Trancio, our representation down in Olympia. Take it away, Michael.
Well, be careful what you ask for on using the word esteem, particularly with me first thing in the morning. So my apologies for the background. You're not able to see a blurred background. James sent out an agenda earlier this morning that I'm going to go through pretty quickly. And as he mentioned, the Senate Ways and Means Committee is meeting this morning beginning at 9 a.m. And their first bill up this morning happens to be the Blake Fix bill, which is second on our agenda. And it's not noted there, but for those of you who want to know, that's Senate Bill 5536. And again, this is the bill that started in the Senate Law and Justice Committee as it was introduced and passed out of the Law and Justice Committee earlier this week. And it was substituted by Senator Dingra in the committee. And once you get the report, if you'd like to, click on that link and that substitute link, you'll see there what Senator Dingra's bill did in terms of changing from the original bill that was introduced. And basically what the proposed substitute does, and the bill that the Ways and Means Committee is hearing here shortly, is it allows and encourages prosecutorial and law enforcement pre-charging diversion programs. And you guys and gals all know this about jail alternative programs and law enforcement assisted diversion programs. And again, that's something that we feel keeps us focused on what we need to do and focuses on treatment for folks rather than incarceration or jail. It reinserts and establishes the knowingly possession of a controlled substance standard, keeps the charge as a gross misdemeanor, does not, as a bill that was introduced, take possession back to a felony. It exempts substance analyzation and testing equipment from the definition of drug paraphernalia. And you all know far more about that than I do, and how much of a time saver that is. It does a lot of things with regard to treatment and substance use disorder, in terms of counseling, in terms of treatment programs and things like that. And really does, emphasize that treatment side of things, trying to keep folks out of jail and the emergency room. And remember, there are several other bills and some budget proviso dollars related to mobile crisis response teams and co-responder teams. And so there's some dough that'll be flowing down to local agencies to help enhance those types of services. And coupled with this treatment platform, I think it's going to be a good meld of trying to keep people out of the criminal justice system, which is something that we're in favor of. So, and I'm going to testify here shortly on that bill in support for the reasons I just mentioned. And I think at the end of the day, while, maybe it could be a little bit heavier on the consequences side, it certainly fills the two accountability and treatment pillars that we've talked about in terms of what we'd like to see in a Blake Fix. So with that, just know that this testimony today is kind of interesting. The prosecuting attorneys signed up as other not to testify. Walcott signed up in favor not to testify. There is a lot of testimony on the treatment and court side as other, the drug courts, the public defenders, the Defenders Association, and WASPIC are all signed up to testify as other. And as we've talked about on these calls, other is a good place to be if you're interested in nuancing and, you like some parts of the bill and maybe not parts of others. So, and there's a lot, I mean, I just say that just because there's a lot of testimony other. So every local government that signed up is to testify or either in support. So local governments seem to really like this proposal that Senator Dingres put forward. So I'm going to stop there and see if there are any questions on 5536. All right. What I should have mentioned first is welcome to the 41st legislative day of the 105-day session. For those of you who don't know, original policy House committee cutoff was yesterday. And again, as I mentioned on these calls, what that means is any policy bill that isn't necessary to implement the budget, that isn't out of its policy committee of origin, is technically done for the session and won't move forward. Again, I caveat that by being necessary to implement the budget. So as budgets begin to come out later this month and early next, you'll start seeing budgets or bills sort of get re-energized and become more alive because the budget or a budget has funded them. So again, that big caveat. And then next Friday is fiscal committee cutoff of the original House. And that means that all these bills that are in the Ways and Means committee, the Appropriations Committee, and not really for our purposes, but the Transportation and Capital Budget committees get another week to consider and pass out pieces of legislation onto the rules committees in each body. So that's sort of where we are in the process. March 8th is the original House cutoff. So here in a few weeks, we're going to be at roughly about halfway through the session, give or take. So that's where we are process-wise. Qualified immunity, House Bill 1025. It passed out of the Civil Rights and Judiciary Committee and is now in the Appropriations Committee. No hearing is scheduled for that bill yet in Appropriations. And remember, we, the FOP, signed up in opposition to that legislation, and we'll probably do so as well in the Appropriations Committee. House Bill 1445, and remember, that's the Law Enforcement Agency Patterns and Practices Bill, or House Bill 1445. That bill passed out of Civil Rights and Judiciary, golly sakes, it seems like eons ago, but about 2 weeks ago. We submitted written comments on that bill in favor, or testified in favor of that bill at the Civil Rights and Judiciary Committee. It got a public hearing day before yesterday in the House Appropriations Committee, where we submitted some written testimony in favor, but didn't testify. Any questions on qualified immunity or patterns and practices, James, before I move on? Anything in the chat?
Nope, all good.
All right. So the next sort of what I would call slew of bills relates to vehicular pursuits and the vehicular pursuits working group. There is no vehicular pursuit companion bill in the Senate, but in the House, House Bill 1363 is the bill that's sponsored by Representative Goodman that's moving along. It received a due pass as substituted out of his committee day before yesterday. I would note that it was referred to the Transportation Committee and it passed out of committee on an 8-to-1 vote. The one no vote was Representative Farviar, and she took the view that no changes were needed and that the current law was working appropriately. So of note there is that the three 3 Republicans on the committee voted aye for the bill. So again, no pursuit bill in the Senate that's a companion. So for vehicular pursuit purposes, House Bill 1363 is the vehicle that'll move forward. And I believe that bill is going to have to, no, it went to transportation. So that's the policy committee it goes to. So I'll stop there and see if anybody wants to add anything on vehicular pursuits. I can talk about before I, forget. It basically adds reasonable suspicion back in and adds it back in for basically about everything except for property crimes, which I think a lot of folks on the Republican side would like to have seen that piece added in. But the main thing it adds is reasonable suspicion back and assault first, second, third, and fourth involving and domestic violence. So I'll stop there and see, James, if you want to add anything else or anybody would like to add anything else on 1363 before I keep going.
Nope, I just want to thank the committee for putting the hard work in, coming up with something that was workable on both sides of the aisle and got it out. Does it dial everything back? No, but I think legislatively speaking, it's a good compromise. The one thing I would add, there was an amendment accepted to it. Then it's a sunset clause on it of July 1st, 2025, which leads me to my next comment. Now's the time to focus on the working group that's going to further perfect policy around this state. We need to make sure we have good people at the table. We need to make sure that bill, which was also heard the same day and passed out, has the legs and the funding to go.
Got it.
And just to add on that, I do have to thank Representative Goodman for pushing what he did. Obviously the sunset clause, it just shows that we're going to have to focus on that working group and come up with some great policy as stakeholders, which we're definitely committed to do.
All right, I'm going to move on to the vehicular pursuit working group and grant program bills. And those are House Bill 1586 and Senate Bill 5533, both of which are moving along, and 1586 passed out day before yesterday out to the Appropriations Committee. It's not yet scheduled yet. And then 5533 received the due pass out of the Civil Rights and Judiciary Committee a couple of weeks ago, had a hearing in Ways and Means. A few days after that, we signed up in support of both the bills, and not scheduled yet for executive action on 5533. And remember, those are the bills that create a grant program for technology as it relates to vehicular pursuits with regard to drones, ALPRs, and GPS, things like GPS tracking systems. And then also, as James mentioned, creates that working group that will be focused through the CJTC. And that's where we'll have to roll up our sleeves and, get some good data on vehicular pursuits and have a group that recommends some solid model policies, a lot like the K9 working group did, that was, at least in my opinion, very successful. Any other questions on vehicle pursuits or pursuits working group or funding? James, you want to add anything?
No, I think you did a pretty good job, but again, now's the time to focus on that working group, making sure we got the right people at the table. I received a lot of feedback from our members about the vote and thanking us for our hard work. The credit goes to Michael there. He did a very good job. What I would say is, as the FOP, we need to focus on what we do have on the table and not what we didn't get on the table or what we would have liked on the table. Let's focus what we do have in hand and move forward with that in a positive way.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Next bill, Senate Bill 5361 that we support is a bill that authorizes cities and counties to impose an additional sales and use tax rate of 0.1% for employing additional commissioned law enforcement officers and for criminal justice purposes. It also notably eliminates the 25% cost sharing requirement for the CJTC and requires the CJTC to provide up to 25 BLEA courses beginning in fiscal year 2023. Something that we support. I am not certain, now that I look down, it was in Law and Justice, and I'm not certain if I'm certain that it passed out. I just am not aware of when it's scheduled for hearing yet. But that is another one that could be necessary to implement the budget, and from our perspective is just a really good choice to give to local governments for purposes of funding additional commissioned officers and criminal justice purposes. So something we support and something we hope continues to move forward through the legislature. Any questions on that? Okay. Next bill, House Bill 1513, and remember this is the non-moving violation legislation that's out there. It received a due pass as substituted about a week ago out of the Criminal Community Safety, Justice and Reform Committee. It was referred to Transportation. It's scheduled for a public hearing next week. And as everybody knows, this is one that, limits some proactive policing that we do day in and day out. And having said that, there's a lot of folks who are going to be supportive of this as well. And I think from our standpoint, we're going to continue our quiet opposition to it. It's a low priority for us, but we did sign up in opposition to it before the Community Safety Committee. So it's being heard in the Transportation Committee next week, and I think we'll continue that same tact. James, do you want to add anything else?
Just back on the law enforcement tax bill. It was referred to Ways and Means, and it's up for a hearing. It looks like I just pulled it up. So next week.
Good, thank you. I've got my Ways and Means schedules in front of me. I just haven't had a chance to go through them. They, today they are hearing 20 bills. Tomorrow they are hearing 36 bills. And the day after that, they are hearing 14 bills. Several of those, I was going to go through this later. Several of those we're going to take positions on in Ways and Means, and the same thing in appropriations once those schedules get finalized for next week. Last bill for me is House Bill 1428, and that's the jaywalking bill. And remember, this is a bill that basically allows folks to cross the street anywhere as long as they're complying with the immediate danger standard that you are all familiar with, and exempts pedestrians from traffic control devices and things like that, which is just one of those kind of odd things that people want to exempt. I think there's a lot of thought out there that folks of color are generally overly cited for jaywalking and those sorts of things. So this bill has House Bill 1428. It had a public hearing in the House Transportation Committee, 8-9 days ago, and is still there, and will probably want to be one of those pieces of legislation that that gets taken up for executive action next week. Like 1513, I think that's another one. Well, we'll just, we'll be quietly opposed to it and, sign up in opposition moving forward. So I don't know, anybody wants to add anything on 1428? Okay. I'm going to just kind of walk through just a little bit the schedule of next week. Like I mentioned, this is a fiscal committee cutoff week. A couple of things are on the agenda next week that we will be taking positions on. Marco, the Homes for Heroes program bill is up on the 20th, and that's substitute House Bill 1633. And remember, that's a bill that creates a fund where peace officers can get up to $25,000 for deposit on a home, closing costs, and those sorts of things, as long as there's some criteria that are met. So Marco, you and I will coordinate and get your testimony ready for that hearing. And it's in capital budget, so something that's a little bit, that's the fiscal committee that it's going through. So because it relates to housing, I kind of thought it would go through the appropriations committee, but it's not going to do that. Substitute Senate Bill 5424, which is flexible work hours for general and limited authority peace officers, substitute Senate Bill 5424. And this is the companion bill to the Ramos bill on the House side, which passed out of the Community Safety Committee last week, basically as a study, but moving forward. And it's one of those that the prime sponsor, Representative Ramos, kind of just fits into the category of just not quite ready to be implemented. There's several questions that were raised about it, and rather than try to address it quickly in this session, I think Representative Ramos, just wanted to study this over the interim, and we'll be back next session to get a bill done that will implement flexible work hours for peace officers. So with that, I'm going to stop. I'm going to see if there are any questions, and maybe give everybody a little bit of time of their Saturday morning back.
So we got no questions on social media. And thank you, Michael, for the informative update as always. So what I'd like to do, we got a little bit of time. Let's just go around the room. You guys got anything you want to bring up? And then I've got 2 minutes I want to talk about updates on the Office of Independent Investigation. So go ahead, Jeff. I know you're cutting in and out. Do you got anything?
No, I'm all good. Thanks for the update, guys. We'll see you Tuesday.
Yeah. Chad, how about you?
Hey, I appreciate all the work you guys do. I do have something I do want to address here real quick. Shouldn't take too long. While Marco and I were at the first responder conference in Coeur d'Alene last week, I was approached by a couple of guys. I want to say they're from Whatcom County. Don't quote me on that. I think that's what they had said. And by no means is that am I targeting them for anything, but they brought a question forward and wanted to know why the FOP was opposing the qualified immunity bill, because what they had heard was that our goal or our objective in opposing that was to drive membership up. And the line of thought was that if qualified immunity is canceled, more people would have to come to the FOP to get coverage. And I told them that was absolutely untrue. Our goals for opposing that were could be better answered by Michael, yourself, and Marco, but I assured them that our desire to do so had nothing to do with driving membership of the FOP. It was simply in the best interest of law enforcement. So I don't know if you want to go into that more,
Sure.
or if my explanation was enough.
Yeah, no, yeah, you did really good. And Marco, if you don't mind, I'll take this one. I think what you meant in past legislative sessions, we had supported different versions of the qualified immunity bill. And the reason we did that is, one, if we agree to work on something with somebody, if we don't get everything we want, we don't walk away from the table. Two, she actually listened to us in previous legislative sessions and gave our any law enforcement officer immunity from the standard if they generally follow policy and they or were given a direct order or this. And quite frankly, we brought people in from the national level, which is why it makes us a really good organization, because we are the only national organization for law enforcement here in Washington. That we brought Rob Pride in from Colorado, who's also our chairman of trustees. He actually met with Representative Ty several times, me, Marco, and him. And, when at the end of the day, the finished product, he goes, way better than what we had in Colorado. Go for it, guys. And so that's why we supported previous versions. What happened with this version is flip the script and made it all about protecting the agency and the jurisdiction versus the individual officer. And our point is we have enough checks and balances on individual officers' actions to add yet another one. And so we couldn't support it. In fact, the way 1025 is written this session, it makes it almost impossible for jurisdictions to support their officers, or defend them legally. What I will tell you is, Chad, that rumor or that falsehood originated outside the Fraternal Order of Police. And of course, we're always taking shots from people that, one, have competing interests, two, don't know what the FOP is and what we stand for. And everybody on this call and everybody that's listening to this knows that the FOP is the one true voice for law enforcement. We're going to do the right thing. We're not going to go to a corner and yell at people and just, hey, take our cookies and go home. We're going to be at the table in a good faith effort. So I appreciate you standing up for the organization and getting that foundation going. Totally accurate. And it's unfortunate that other groups spend a lot of time spreading misinformation, but it's all good. We're going to stay focused on what we do and the positive messages that we push forward. With that, Marco, you got anything to add on that?
Yeah, you couldn't have said it better, James. We have to be focused on this organization, be focused on law enforcement as a whole. If it was about membership, we would be supporting this version, that would, probably supporting this version as well, which is just not the case because it's putting all of the onus on an individual. We've always been about an agency culture. We got to understand that there's a difference between agency culture and putting a liability on an individual. This one brings it too far, if we support bills like 1445, for instance, which are about agency culture and practices, that's why wouldn't we support things like that? This 1025 in its current form, it's a bridge too far for us, and we cannot go there.
Yep. Couldn't said it better myself. But again, Chad, thank you for holding the line. And those members up in Wyden County, I know they were upset because we did not support a certain candidate. We supported someone we had a long-term relationship with, and we will continue to support those people that work in good faith with the Fraternal Order of Police. That being said, before I give you an update on the Office of Independent Investigation, Jim, you got any closing remarks?
I'm sorry. No, sir, I don't. I think you've done a good job as usual.
All right, thank you, sir. So as all of you know, the FOP has a seat on the Office of Independent Investigation. We had our monthly board meeting. I am your representative on that board. I'm happy to report that hiring of investigators have started. I will also tell you that the first senior investigator that was hired, I don't want to oust the person because I don't know where the process is, but they are an FOP member and they are current law enforcement. It was a unanimous vote. It was very well held. I'm very proud that the first full-time senior investigator that was hired is an FOP person, a long-standing FOP person. I'm very proud of that. So that office is going to ramp up rather quickly. They bought office space in Spokane. It's going to open up in the next month. They have office space in Olympia and Tumwater. They've got their evidence teams being outfitted now. There were some good questions about policy, about how lookbacks, older cases. They have set up a very robust protocol in order to look at a previous case. So as you guys know, the legislation that opened that Office of Independent Investigation created an ability for them to look back, but the criteria has now been set and we voted on the policy this last meeting, and it takes some doing. It can't be just, hey, I want you to look at this because I don't think it was handled right the first time. You have to bring new evidence. There's a panel that reviews that new evidence, then they make a determination whether they're going to, and then ultimately the deciding factor is resources. If there are resources, and remember what their primary function is, officer involved shootings that are happening now. So I think the staff at the Office of Independent Investigation did a very good job of putting a protocol together for reviewing a case, and it's robust. It's not just, we'll take anything. So very good job. I'm very happy with the way that's moving forward. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. It's 9:30. As Michael said, he had to jump off here to testify, but I appreciate everybody showing up today. Those in virtual land, you can catch this later on WAFOP TV. And again, I want to thank everybody for showing up today, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, James.
Yep, take it easy.